Hello and welcome to the Cube Talk Show. My name is Joe Barbieri. I'm your host for the evening. This is a show about money, how we interact with money, and all aspects of money. The title for today's show is Imagine a World Without the Concept of Money. And we have two guests in the studio today, Ryan Jared from the Zeitgeist Movement and Sandra Kurzakis. And the guests are here in our studio. How are you doing?
Good.
Great.
So Ryan, I'll start with you first. Give me a bit of background about yourself and about the movement in general.
So personally, I am a chartered accountant here in Toronto. I worked for a very large accounting firm for a while, and now I'm moving into nonprofit. You could say my background with the Zeitgeist Movement, which is why I'm here today, dates back just about 2.5 years ago. And I guess we could get into what that's about shortly.
Yes. And Sandra?
Hi. Thanks for having me. This is, I think, going to be a great show. My background is actually from the corporate world, but like Ryan, I've kind of shifted and become a part of a much bigger movement and have changed my lifestyle and changed my perspective and see the world through very different eyes now. And I'm moving forward with a whole nother promoting a whole nother way of life, a whole nother way of being, and a whole nother way of looking at money.
Well,
I love the title of the show, by the way, Joe.
That's what we're here for. So, okay, so the Zeitgeist Movement, to start off with, I guess in a couple of minutes summary.
Sure.
We have a couple of videos actually as well, and after you give a description, we'll play the first one.
Okay.
And the second one we'll play later on, but...
Sounds good. We have a lot of videos. Zeitgeist Movement started late 2008, and it was basically the film that kind of put the idea for something called a resource-based economy out there to more of a mainstream, or at least more of a wider known idea than what it was previously. So a resource-based economy is something that the Zeitgeist Movement advocates. We're in over 70 countries. We're in virtually every Canadian city now. And we're a sustainability advocacy group, is what I would say in summary. But in the context of money, what we advocate for is a more sustainable economy, and that's based on resources as opposed to based on fractional reserve banking or fiat currency, or any kind of other idea that has existed in the past in terms of how money is created. We take a very different stance, and we look at the actual resources that we depend on in order to survive, and say that these resources should be, they could be made in abundance for the things that we need, and they must be produced and manufactured and delivered and consumed in a sustainable way. So we look at more of an economy that's connected to the environment as opposed to what we have now, which is a very large disconnect.
Okay, so we'll play the first video now. And it's the anti-economy, and it's produced by Zeitgeist, so we'll just play that now and you can get an idea.
There's an old saying that the competitive market model seeks to create the best possible goods at the lowest possible prices. This statement is essentially the incentive concept, which justifies market competition based on the assumption that the result is the production of higher quality goods. If I was going to build myself a table from scratch, I would naturally build it out of the best, most durable materials possible, right? With the intent for it to last as long as possible. Why would I want to make something poor, knowing I would have to eventually do it again and expend more materials and more energy? Well, as rational as that may seem in the physical world, when it comes to the market world, it is not only explicitly irrational, it is not even an option. It is technically impossible to produce the best of anything if a company is to maintain a competitive edge and hence remain affordable to the consumer. Literally everything created and set for sale in the global economy is immediately inferior the moment it is produced, for it is a mathematical impossibility to make the most scientifically advanced, efficient, and strategically sustainable products. This is due to the fact that the market system requires that cost efficiency, or the need to reduce expenses, exist at every stage of production, from the cost of labor to the cost of materials and packaging, and so on. This competitive strategy, of course, is to make sure the public buys their goods rather than from a competing producer, which is doing the exact same thing to also make their goods both competitive and affordable. This immutably wasteful consequence of the system could be termed intrinsic obsolescence. However, this is only one part of a larger problem. A fundamental governing principle of market economics, one that you will not find in any textbook, by the way, is the following. Nothing produced can be allowed to maintain a lifespan longer than what can be endured in order to continue cyclical consumption. In other words, it is critical that stuff break down, fail, and expire within a certain amount of time. This is termed planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence is the backbone of the underlying market strategy of every goods-producing corporation in existence. While very few, of course, would admit to such a strategy outright, what they do is mask it within the intrinsic obsolescence phenomenon just discussed, while often ignoring or even suppressing new advents in technology which might create a more sustainable, durable good. So, if it wasn't wasteful enough that the system inherently cannot allow the most durable and efficient goods to be produced, planned obsolescence deliberately recognizes that the longer any good is in operation, the worse it is for sustaining cyclical consumption and hence the market system itself. In other words, product sustainability is actually inverse to economic growth, and hence there is a direct, reinforced incentive to make sure lifespans are short of any given good produced. And in fact, the system cannot operate any other way. One glance at the sea of landfills now spreading across the world show the obsolescence reality. There are now billions of cheaply made cell phones, computers, and other technology, each full of precious, difficult-to-mine materials such as gold, coltan, copper, now rotting in vast piles, usually due to the mere malfunction or obsolescence of small parts, which, in a conservative society, could likely be fixed or updated, and the life of the good extended. Unfortunately, as efficient as that may seem in our physical reality, living on a finite planet with finite resources, it is explicitly inefficient with respect to the market. To put it into a phrase, efficiency, sustainability, and preservation are the enemies of our economic system.
Okay, so that was a good taste of what Zeitgeist says about money. And now, over to Sandra now. So what's your, I guess, what's your interpretation of the theme in terms of...
Well, you know, I really like the way they explain the economy, and actually what we're in is an anti-economy. And it's really about the rate of consumption as opposed to, that's what the economy that we live in now is all about. So I'm really a supporter of that entire movement. What I propose, rather than a resource-based economy, is more of a consciousness-based system of which the resource-based system is a part of. So the idea that the idea is to actually work from a consciousness perspective. So a one for all and a unity consciousness perspective. So a one for all and all for one kind of mentality. Basically to want what I want for myself to want for absolutely everybody else out there. So my idea is that there's no hierarchy in the system, complete transparency in the system, and things that we can implement right now to actually change the system right now. And I'm not sure if the Zeitgeist movement has something like that where you can actually implement something right now. How would you actually connect the money to the actual resource-based system? Can you describe that a little bit?
Sure, if you don't mind, yeah. Okay, so in terms of money, what we use money for today is just to facilitate exchange, right?
Right.
So if someone needs, some meat, and they only make hammers, so then they would use money instead of using their hammers. What a resource-based economy is all about is really looking at how much we can produce of a certain good based on the resources that actually exist in the world and the technologies that we know that can be used to produce most efficiently.
Got it.
So we say we have a certain amount of this kind of material that can produce this kind of good.
Okay.
And if there is, say, a scarcity of that resource, then instead of having people own it, we have to say, okay, what is it that they're using it for? So say you knew that there was certain metal that you would use in some form of transportation, and that metal was scarce. Is there another way to get people to transport from one place to another without using that metal at all? Is there another alternative that we can produce technologically? And if there isn't, and this is really a very unique kind of resource, then we have to find a way of sharing that amongst the people that are in need of that resource or of that service, you know. But it's always within the idea that there is this finite number of resources on the planet, and we have to manage that, and the way that we decide to manage that is through the most efficient technological means and recording. So, I mean, if you look at a corporation today, they know how much of a resource they have access to based on what mines they own, based on what production facilities they have. They don't necessarily release that information, so it's very difficult to get that information out into a marketplace.
And that's where transparency is really important. I think that one of the fundamental differences between the Zeitgeist movement and what I'm proposing is it's not coming from a limitation perspective, coming from an abundance perspective, and not relying on something else to tell us how much money we need to produce. So, for example, the bottom line is there's enough food on this planet right now to feed every single person on this planet. Absolutely. So why are we not doing that? That's because we have stopgaps in the system, that are preventing certain people, certain countries, certain groups from getting money, and we are limiting it by this thing called money.
Sure.
And we are basically, with this thing called money, we are basically saying, okay, we are going to determine governments or powers that be, elitists, you know, the corporations, whomever controls the money, is basically saying we are going to determine who gets the money and how much they have to pay for certain goods and services. Sure. So that's, I think, the one of the fundamental differences. I'm coming from a abundance perspective. And the rest, I believe, will fall out once everybody is made equal. One of the fundamental principles of what I am proposing, which is basically called consciousness rising, what I'm basically proposing is that everything is created equal. So, which I know the Zeitgeist movement does that as well. So there is no hierarchy in the system. So, for instance, one of the things that we could do right now to implement right now is to basically say, okay, no more, we take away the old concept of money. The reason I like the name of the show is because money is not the bad thing here. It's the way we view money. Right now, money is a measurement in a form of status, so it's a form of control and it's a form of hierarchy and it's a form of limitation. If we took away that concept of money and money were just a straight exchange, as you were saying earlier, then there would be no hierarchical system, nothing like a debt, nothing like banks. And what I'd like to propose is if we could take away all the money right now and basically say, okay, everybody from, say, Monday on, everybody gets, nobody earns a wage anymore. Nobody earns a salary anymore. And what happens is everybody gets a certain amount of money deposited in the bank account or what have you. Everybody has a certain amount of money to survive, to function for their day-to-day needs. Nobody pays rent anymore. Nobody pays a mortgage. Nobody pays for any of these long-term things. All of that is taken away. We basically are given a certain amount of money to survive. Everybody has to stay where they are, stay in their jobs, do what they're currently doing, live their current life as is, so that we can implement this system. And then there has to be a bit of trust. That's the whole unity consciousness thing. Everybody has to stay where they are, make the commitment to be where they are right now. But nobody makes more money than anybody else. A doctor does not make more than a janitor, does not make more than an athlete, does not make more than a movie star, does not make more than an accountant, does not make more than a teacher. And so that takes away that hierarchy. So when even people who, for instance, don't want to go to work, because they can't stand their job. Watch the dynamics in the environment change once you have your boss or the CEO is making the same amount. Now, our incentive and our objectives will now change, because it's not about getting the best performance appraisal. It's not about getting, you know, that raise anymore, because it's not about making the money. And when you go and you buy products in the store, you know, everything is marked up. Well, if there's no more profit to be made, watch the prices all come down.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you get rid of the profit when you still have money in the system. I mean, what we advocate for is actually just abolishing money completely.
And
it's
so,
not really
so
a relevant factor in
yes.
the decision at all.
Yes.
I mean, people that have to work in the system, yes, there will be jobs, but we're looking to automate as much as we can, so we don't have to actually have people doing jobs that they don't necessarily want to do. And if we can't eliminate all those jobs, we have to have a certain amount of volunteer work, which, if you look at our societies today, Western societies or any kind of society, there's always been an abundance of, or a large percentage of people that do volunteer, and that's what's going to be dependent on for this society to function. With reference to what you said about abundance, the goal is abundance. The goal is to make an abundance. Like for food, we can make an abundance of food. It's very clear. We could start growing food indoors, on rooftops, all the arable land. You know, if you take a drive out to the country, you see a lot of arable land that's not being used. Why not? You know, we could do that. The land resources are there to make a lot of food, or indoor through hydroponics, which is actually much more efficient. But we don't do that because there's a monetary barrier to do it, or a legal barrier perhaps, or, you know, there's large corporations that have incentive to restrict the amount of food that can be made. But yeah, the goal is always to keep in mind that we can make a certain amount of abundance, but we're still living within a finite planet. I mean, we still have only a certain amount of resources, and they can only replenish themselves through varying degrees of time. Oil, for example, might take millions of years for there to be more oil, so that's quite a finite resource, and basically what we have now is what we're going to have.
But here's the thing, okay, to that point, if there's no money to be made, okay, now the incentive to look to alternative forms of energy, and even medicine, even with the healthcare system, the pharmaceutical systems, the oil industry, they would all come crashing down. There would be no more banking system either. No. And so now the incentive to explore new opportunities for alternative energy, for alternative health care would be out there, because it's no longer about making a profit. Sure. So we'd have, who knows what we would come up with. Right?
Some amazing things.
And,
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of talk about free energy already, and it's just being capped. Whether that's true or not, we'd be able to explore that, because there'd be nothing to stop us from exploring it. And if everybody is created equal, that means now we've increased the potential for the minds, because we only have the privileged few who are able to come up with inventions like Steve Jobs did in North America. You know, if now we can expand that to the great minds all over the world. How many people are living in third world countries who would have incredible ideas if they only had the opportunity, if they had the basic needs met? So one of the philosophies, or one of the principles for the consciousness rising, is basic needs equals basic rights. And the fact that you exist means you have a right not just to thrive, not just to survive, but to thrive. So everybody is fed, everybody is, you know, housed, everybody has clothes, so that we can explore who we truly are. So you take away all that elitism, and we'd have the opportunities to explore, you know. So, and this is something we could implement right now. If we really wanted to, we could implement this right now. We could say, okay, old money gone. Everybody have an electronic bank account. Let's put a certain amount of money in. And it's not about limiting the amount of money. If someone says, okay, you know what, this is not enough money for me, then we just give them more. The idea is, we print the money.
I disagree. I mean, I wouldn't take the approach of just giving everybody a certain amount of money, or you know, above or beyond whatever people think they need. Really what they need is resources. They don't need money. You can't eat money. There's nothing really that is practical about money in and of itself.
I agree.
So what you need is to say, okay, if we need to give everybody food, water, shelter, clothing, you know, certain other things, heat in the wintertime, whatever it is going to be, we have to say, okay, how can we do that most sustainably, most efficiently, right? If there's a shortage of food, which there isn't in this city, but if, say, you said there was, then you have to say, okay, how can we either ship in more food in the most efficient way, or grow food in all the arable land that we have that we could be taking advantage of right now.
Well, see, that's the thing.
Backyards. That's a resource, though. That's not money.
But I'm talking not just Toronto. I'm talking worldwide, right? So I'm saying, you know, so everybody, the first step everybody would have to have money, because that's where we are right now. Okay, so the simplest thing we could do right now is everybody have enough of whatever it takes to get food and water and shelter. So in some countries, maybe it's not money, but that everybody has enough to take care of themselves so that we can start building homes for the people who don't have home, like I'm thinking third world countries, I'm thinking everybody across the board. And so to your point, you know, if there's not enough food here, a lot of these jobs are going to be obsolete. Bankers are going to be obsolete. So there will be new positions. People will be able to explore different things. So people will, I believe that
so
people...
you won't force me to be an accountant then?
I will. You know what? You will have the opportunity to do what you want. And I think that there has to be a certain trust in the people and the populace. And once we get over the novelty of, wow, I don't, you know, I have as much as I need, people will truly explore who they want to be. I really, there's no doubt in my mind that we will go that way, and people will not be doing something at the expense of something else. That, you know, if you no longer, if your job is no longer relevant anymore, then you can start to explore maybe gardening, or creating some sort of environment on the land where you can start producing food. And this is what I mean about the natural fallout and of how things, I think, will adjust and find themselves. We can't have the answers right here, right now. We cannot say, okay, we'll do this, then this will happen, then this will happen, then this will happen, then this. We cannot possibly know. But what we can do is say, this is what we can do right now. Let's grow with it. Let's progress with it. Let's adapt with it. As long as we want for everybody else what we want for ourselves, there will never be a problem. That's...
Okay, so the common ground is that there is enough to go around. It's a matter of getting it to them. So the efficient method versus the abundance method, well, I guess they're both part of the same method, but...
I mean,
the more efficient you are, the more abundance you're going to have, more abundance you're going to have.
So that's the first point, is that there is enough. Everybody can have it.
Not of everything, but certainly the basic needs, as you suggested, no question. I mean, that's been proven for a very long time.
So I think you've answered some of this already, but if you were to start this minute to implement how to get to that end where everybody has enough and they have it in their hand, I mean, I think it's there, it's just not in their hand, it's stockpiled or not distributed where it should be, or what's the first step that you would say now, like, well, as of now?
I mean, it's a complex question what you're asking. Are you asking as an individual with the resources that I have, so like a normal person on the street, what can they do? Or you're saying all of a sudden I'm given some kind of superpower where I'm now able to control distribution methods and corporate and corporations and governments.
Start with the individual, because
okay.
Most people don't have that much yet.
Okay,
anyway.
okay, so I sort of agree. I mean, that's what we look at. That's the zeitgeist moment we look at how to transition, right? So this is what we call it, transitioning to this world. And it would be wonderful if we could do it all in one day and the consciousness would change and everything would be there. But we feel like, you know, you're going to have to push it. There are people that have a lot of power that control the way things are today, and they don't just want to give it up because we suggest that this is a good idea. So you have to kind of coerce them into doing that. And the way to do that is to realize that this system that we're living in, this oppressive system, is based purely on cyclical consumption, as illustrated in that video. So if you do not consume this, this economy cannot function. If debt does not grow, this economy cannot function. So how do you, as an individual, kind of be the change you want to see in the world, as Gandhi would say? So you want to start living in this world already. And that's the best way, right? You do it by your individual efforts. So you say, okay, I'm not going to consume as much. I'm going to learn how to fix things. I'm going to learn how to share things with my neighbors. If I live in a condo, for example, and I have a vacuum cleaner, perhaps I could share that with my neighbors rather than have 10 vacuum cleaners on the same floor. I don't use it that often. You know, I could share that. Instead of using a car, which uses, you know, oil for the most part today, perhaps I could find ways of either carpooling or taking public transport or moving to closer to my work and spending more time in my community as opposed to you know, commuting long distances. So you know, there are decisions that one can make in their own lives depending on the circumstances that they have available to them. But as you start moving in that direction, and you start saying, well, you know what, maybe I have a house and I have grass in my backyard, or maybe I don't have a house, but I know people with houses, or I have neighbors with houses. Maybe I could start meeting them and start growing food, you know, locally in my area. And we could just, you know, if I help out, we've had situations where we've helped out people where they farm land in the back of a backyard. They get a percentage of that food. The people who own the land also get a percentage. So there's a sharing going on. And that just creates more food, essentially, for people. And so if you look at how to do that in the basic needs and the things that you typically need in your life on a regular basis, then you can start consuming far less. And that will allow for change to happen, you know, maybe slowly. People think it's slow, but once you do it, your family sees you do it, your friends start seeing you do it, and then expand, and it could grow quite quickly.
Actually, I think there is a movement towards that already. I think a lot of people are doing a lot of things like that. A lot of people are having like swap, you know, like the garage sale thing and swap parties where people are, you know, one person's junk is another person's jewel.
Sure.
So a lot of people are doing that kind of thing already. But if I may ask a question, what I'd like to know is there a place for, you know, with the whole Occupy movement that's going on, is Zeitgeist doing anything to kind of, because it seems to me that there would be a nice fit there.
Absolutely. Yes, I mean, it's very exciting. Actually, there's a lot of videos on that Zeitgeist has put out in response to the Occupy movement. I mean, we didn't start it necessarily, but it's very coincidental. If you look at the end of the most recent film, Zeitgeist Moving Forward, there's a sequence where there's protesters in all of these cities all around the world protesting not the government, but the economic system itself. And if you look at the Occupy movement, they're very much focused on, at least starting at the start as a starting point, Wall Street and say the financial sector in general, which is really where we're looking at. So there's a lot of similarities. Now, the people that come out to the Occupy movements and they haven't stated any goals, they haven't stated that they want a sustainable society like a resource-based economy or something similar, and I think they're waiting to see how big it can get. And then they could realize what their demands might realistically be. But you know, I personally and a lot of the people in my group in Toronto, at least, have been to the Occupy Toronto event. I know in New York there's a lot of people out there. We had Peter Joseph, the maker of the films, he did a big speech in the LA event, the LA Occupy. So there are people from all around the world that are part of the Zeitgeist movement that are trying to get that message out there to the people that are there. And start having that discussion about solutions as opposed to problems. I mean, most protests that you see, generally speaking, are against something. They do want to stop something from happening. Yeah. But we're not trying to do that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to suggest that this is a positive solution that's going to address all the bad things that are happening, but we're fighting for something, right? And if we could, and I think that these Occupy, with the general assemblies that are happening and just the kind of nature of the event, is really accommodating for this message to get out as best as possible. So hopefully there is a lot of similarities we could go with.
I see the Occupy movement as really instrumental with you know, the frustrations and the unrest that's happening. And I think it's really a sign of the times. And again, like you, Ryan, I think a lot of people are saying, "Okay, we're frustrated. We don't want any of this." But you know, where is the solution? You know, nobody's coming up with the solution, and I think, you know, we need to have somebody come forward with a solution, and what I think I'm proposing is a viable solution that could be implemented right away, and then which something like the Zeitgeist movement could also come in and play a part, but it can actually affect every single person. There are many people in the U.S. that are going through such a difficult time right now. If everybody were just like that. Like what they were when the government gave everybody a certain amount of money as an incentive to spend more, when the economy, you know, if they can do that, why not just give everybody everything they need just to live? So, you know, forget about the mortgages. Everybody just stays where they are. Everybody just continues to do their thing, and so that there is no more. You know, no more fighting for food, no more fighting, you know, no more of that struggle, and then let it play out from there. So that's my only thing with the Zeitgeist movement. It's great, but it's what could you do right now? You know, not 6 months from now. This is something we could implement right now. Because the truth is, there's enough food out there. So why aren't people getting it?
To do it right now, I mean, I just don't see how that's possible, given that the ownership structure. I mean, there still is private ownership in existence. So
not if you wiped everything out. What I'm proposing is you have to wipe everything out. The concept of money, everything, which means, okay, all government. Anybody who is in government now also has to be wiped out, okay, because they're part of the system. That means it has to be the people going in, and I know this sounds radical, but the truth is we could do it tomorrow. There's enough people on Wall Street, there's enough people in Toronto right now that could go in there and be a representative of the people for the people?
It's going to take a fight. I mean, I think we're trying to get in the same direction. I think maybe perhaps you think it's going to happen sooner than I think it can happen, but I think it's going to happen. And I agree that the basic needs have to be met. And like the Occupy movement, here's what I think. I mean, there's two options for the Occupy movement. There's one is to work within the system and to propose reforms or some kind of other distribution that addresses the inequality that is one of the foundations of this movement, right? So that's one option. The other option is to create a parallel system that runs alongside this one. So it's a kind of a parallel government, okay?
Okay.
And in this system, we start saying, well, what resources do we have? So you go to the people in that movement, you start saying, okay, what do you guys have? Can we go house to house, neighbor to neighbor, business to business, and say, okay, what resources do we have to build this new society that we want to have living alongside this other one that isn't quite ready yet?
Okay,
and
so
they will come over.
Here's the difference. I like the idea of the parallel because that's a great transition from the new into the old. The only thing for me is instead of saying what resources do we have, I would be saying what needs do we have? Let's look at the needs.
Okay.
Is that different, or is that the same thing?
What you might need, if you're living on an island and you need food in order to survive there long term, and there isn't any resources there to have food, then it doesn't matter what you need. You have to start with the resources. You have to start with what you have, and then you could say, okay, here's what we've got. I don't know that we could have 7 billion people on the planet or 700 billion. I don't know the answer, but I need to know. But in order for us to know that, we need to see first what we've got. In order to kind of see,
to me, I would say here's what we need. I would disagree with that. I would say to look at what we need first, okay, and then from there say, okay, now what do we have, and let's divvy it up. Let's divvy everything that we have. Like if we were to look at the old money, if we were to look at all the money that we had that everybody has and pooled it into one big piggy bank, okay, the truth is, okay, there'd be enough money to go around for everybody. Okay, we just have a certain percentage of people.
If there's no connection to the money and the resources, I mean, it doesn't matter. You could print money all day. You could print 100 times the amount of money in existence now, but what's the difference? You still, the resources are finite. That's what's real. So we have to start with what's real.
See, I don't think, I guess my perspective on the resources being finite are not, I'm not so sure I agree with that.
Well, I mean, unless asteroids are hitting the Earth in abundance and we're getting all this new metal, like, you can't really... We have a finite. It's a closed.
I think. Well, we are.
Hang on a second.
Please go ahead.
I have to interrupt you. I have to interrupt your role. So the idea is what we need versus what we have. Okay. Well. Okay. Well, we'll get to that later.
Okay.
Actually, we'll just take a break now for a few minutes. We'll play the second video of Zeitgeist, and we'll resume on this topic. So we'll be back soon.
There's no profit under the current paradigm in saving lives, putting balance on this planet, having justice and peace or anything else. There's just no profit there. There's an old saying, pass a law, create a business. Whether you're creating a business for a lawyer or whatever. So, crime does create business, just like destruction creates business in Haiti. We have now roughly 2 million people incarcerated in this country, and of those, many of them are in prisons run by private corporations, Corrections Corporation of America, Wackenhut, who trade their stock on Wall Street based upon how many people are in jail. Now, that's sickness, but that is a reflection of what this economic paradigm calls for.
So what exactly does this economic paradigm call for? What is it that keeps our economic system going? Consumption. Or more accurately, cyclical consumption. When we break down the foundation of classic market economics, we are left with a pattern of monetary exchange that simply cannot be allowed to stop or even substantially slowed, if the society as we know it is to remain operational. There are three main actors on the economic stage: the employee, the employer, and the consumer. The employee sells labor to the employer for income. The employer sells its production services and hence goods to the consumer for income. And the consumer, of course, is simply another role of the employer and employee, spending back into the system to enable the cyclical consumption to continue. In other words, the global market system is based on the assumption that there will always be enough product demand in society to move enough money around at a rate which can keep the consumption process going. And the faster the rate of consumption, the more so-called economic growth is assumed, and so the machine goes. But hold on, I thought an economy was meant to, I don't know, economize? Doesn't the very term have to do with preservation and efficiency and a reduction of waste? So how does our system, which demands consumption and the more the better, efficiently preserve or economize at all? Well, it doesn't. The intent of the market system is, in fact, the exact opposite of what a real economy is supposed to do, which is efficiently and conservatively orient the materials for production and distribution of life-supporting goods. We live on a finite planet with finite resources, where, for example, the oil we utilize took millions of years to develop, where the minerals we use took billions of years to develop. So, having a system that deliberately promotes the acceleration of consumption for the sake of so-called economic growth is pure ecocidal insanity.
Absence of waste, that's what efficiency is. Absence of waste. This system is more wasteful than all the other existing systems in the history of the planet. Every level of life organization and life system is in a state of crisis and challenge and decay or collapse. No peer-reviewed journal in the last 30 years will tell you anything different. That is that every life system is in decline, as well as social programs, as well as our water access. Try to name any means of life that isn't threatened and in danger. You can't. There really isn't one, and that's very, very despairing. But we haven't even figured out the causal mechanism. We don't want to face the causal mechanism. We just want to go on, that's what insanity is, where you keep doing the same thing over and over again, though it clearly doesn't work. So you're really dealing with not an economic system, but I would go so far as to say an anti-economic system.
Okay, we're back on the Cube Talk Show with Ryan Jared and Sandra Krzakis. So we left off with deciding how I see it is you're coming from opposite sides and meeting in a common area, what you need and what you have. Eventually they meet each other and you have what you need and there'll be a little bit left. Well, I think there'll be a little bit left. We can stay on that theme because I think it covers a lot of area. If you said, so the first stage was going out and sharing and swapping things and using more of the resources that were already there, if that were to get done, so let's say everyone started bartering with their neighbors, growing food locally, using more things effectively, etc., what do you think the next... My idea of the next stage of that would be your psychology would change. If somebody has enough versus not enough, how would you think they'd function, or how would the system function?
Yeah, I mean, it tends to that when you are sharing things, when you're actually building relationships within your community, you do change as a person, and I think that touches on the consciousness that she's probably suggesting. I tend to still look at it as the technical perspective of if you look at the economics, so now this economy cannot function any longer. So you're going to have a lot more people actually going bankrupt, a lot of companies going bankrupt, a lot more individuals not getting the money in order to survive, but then in turn getting the resources that they need in order to survive. And then them having that consciousness shift where they realize that they are connected to the resources. And that is what's really defining their quality of life, not money. Right now people just think if they dream of money. They don't dream of necessarily the resources. They play the lotteries just so they can have more money in order to do more things, rather than, trying to get more things through their communities, which they can get in abundance. So the shift is when you start having a very threatening position, and a lot of people are doing this. So now you're threatening the economy and its foundation. Then you have a lot more ability to negotiate the kind of changes that we need. And I can't suggest that we're going to have a resource-based economy so quickly. Like I wouldn't think it's 1 year down the road, 5 years down the road. Hopefully it is, but it's really probably longer term, that shift, as more and more people become more aware of their connection, then we start having to make larger decisions, and these are scientifically based decisions, on how to get an infrastructure in place to build better transportation systems, to build better food distribution systems, to build more cleaner and healthier water, and just the basic things that a society needs. One goal of the Zeitgeist Movement is to build a test city. So we would obviously need land for that and resources for that. But if you had a government who kind of discovered this way of thinking and said, okay, this is actually something that we can try and do, let's test it out. Let's have a city of 10,000 people or whatever, and pick a number, and let's see how it can function as a resource-based economy. And if it could work there, then we could have other cities spring up around the world, right? And this could be used as a model, and we'd invite people to come and learn from it, and it would constantly be evolving and growing.
And what I'm suggesting is, in the meantime, while you're doing that, why not just give everybody enough money to survive? Why not just give,
It's not worth anything if you just give money.
It doesn't, money's not worth anything anyway, right?
That's true.
So why not just give people everything they need right now, and while you're waiting to build that test city, okay, there's still people starving, and why not just, we have enough money, just print the money and allow people to have enough money to survive. Why can't we just do that? Why can't we do that tomorrow?
Well, what the government does, when they print money,
Sure.
when central banks or commercial banks actually print most of the money, I mean, they're not printing it, they're just producing it electronically through loans. But say, if you look at most of the money that exists, what that causes is inflation, so the prices of everything else goes up. The more money there is...
But if there's no profit to be made, then prices won't go up, right?
Well, there's more money in the economy, so it's just a supply and demand. So you have more of something.
But
it's
if people have enough money just to buy for their goods and services for their daily needs, okay, so for the groceries, the cleaning, whatever it is, to get to work, whatever it is, okay, so just to perform their daily tasks, no more paying rent, no more paying a mortgage, okay, because nobody is earning a wage, nobody is earning a salary anymore. Everybody is now created equal. So the CEO, Bill Gates, is not making any more money than the homeless person on the street, right? So everybody's now created equal. Okay, so now everybody has a certain amount of money in their bank account and can now eat and can now not have to worry, okay, how they're going to pay for their next month's rent.
That's very
okay. So that's something we can do right now. Then we can work, and who knows, maybe we wouldn't even have to build a test city after that, because maybe we could actually start to see things be happening for everybody.
Sure. But we have such inefficient cities right now. I mean, we really, to be most efficient in this city.
That's our fault. We can do something about that.
We have to build new cities.
Well, and that can play out, but in the meantime, everybody still has to eat. Everybody still has. How can we do all that stuff if everybody's so bogged down by having to pay their mortgage or having to buy food for their family? That's the whole point. Everybody's so busy trying to pay the bills, nobody can do any of that.
Yeah, no, I'm all for like canceling debt. If you can do that, just cancel all the debt in people's lives. Fantastic. I mean,
so everything is gone and everybody's created equal. That has to be number one.
Yes.
If nobody earns anything more than anybody else. Nobody earns anything. Everybody has what they need. Okay, that's number one. Number two, transparency.
Well, I mean, you're going to have a problem because you're going to have all these people who are used to making more and believe actually that they're not equal. They believe that they're better than someone else.
And that's the concept of money that we were talking about.
So it's basically
right?
this concept. All right. So you're going with this, and you say, okay. So for example, doctors. I don't know. I've met doctors, but say there's a certain group of doctors who believe that they are better than someone else.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Fine.
Now you're telling them, okay, you're not going to make any more money than someone else. Then what's to say that they'll just say, well, I don't want to participate in that system, so I'm going to take away my skills as a doctor, and I'm not. And then the society's left with one less doctor, or maybe a large group of them get together and they say, we're not going to accept that because we all think that we're better. Even I'm an accountant, right? So there was a I don't know if this is
after in that doctor category, right? No.
No, there's an example of like there's different kinds of accountants. Okay, there's CAs, which is chartered accountants. There's CGAs, certified general accountants. I mean, there's actually three types of accountants that are considered with the degree in accounting that we have in Ontario. All right.
Okay.
Now, what they tried to do is they tried to merge two of them.
Okay.
And say, okay, you two are a group of accountants together, and by being together, you're more powerful, right? And they could have more of a say in the international standards of accounting. And the people in the CA felt that they were better than the CMA, so they said, no, we're not going to be part of that. We're not going to combine together.
So that's one of the principles of the movement that I'm promoting, that I'm proposing as well, and that is no ego.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, but there is
Money
an ego
equals
now, right?
ego, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And you're right. There would be a problem with that. Okay. There will. I agree. But that is the 1%.
Oh, you think?
I do. I do. I think that's the 1%. And I think when the numbers are greater than I mean, we've actually been, the rest of the population has been at the mercy of that select few, 1%, maybe 5%.
Okay.
Even, you know, whatever you want to call it.
A minority
okay,
number.
it's still definitely a minority, okay? So as this movement will work if the majority of the people want it. Yes, you're going to have the people who, basically there's the haves and the have-nots. And what I'm saying is let's just abolish. There's no such thing as a have or a have-not. Doctors, athletes, they're the haves, okay? But who gives them the right? Just because you're a doctor, just because you're an athlete and you know how to throw a ball. Big deal. You get more money because you get to throw a ball. You're more important than somebody who teaches somebody at school. That's ridiculous. And once everybody is created equal and everything is created equal, that whole philosophy will change. Yes, you're going to have those that are resistant, but I think those are going to be so few and far between that they are going to be pretty afraid of the power of the people. I believe in the power of the people. The Occupy movement is testament to that.
I'm actually going to say something a little radical for you, perhaps.
Uh-oh.
Okay,
and
just say that and then we'll...
Okay, then we'll move on to the next point.
Well, we'll have to wrap up soon, yeah.
In fact, my goal is equal access to resources, but not necessarily equality as I hear it, as I think I'm hearing it. What our goal is to get everybody to live up to their highest potential. Now, my potential and your potential might not be equal.
Okay.
Okay, you might have better skills at certain areas than I do, and that's fine. So we're not actually equal. All men isn't created equal. Actually, everybody has differences. But as long as we can create a society through education that lifts up everybody up to that potential that they have, the maximum amount of potential.
Well, one of the principles of what I'm proposing is that everybody has the right not just to survive, but to thrive. And that means to achieve their potential. And that means if you're a great runner, then you're a great... But in that sense, we're all equal because we're all allowed to... Everybody's here for a reason. Yes. Everybody is unique, and everybody's here to do something that nobody else can do, right? So let's allow ourselves to achieve that. So yes, you might be, far better accountant than I will be, and that's great. Not everybody needs to be an accountant. Not everybody needs to be a fast runner. Thank God. We want that variety and that diversity, but it's to allow, and think about the people who are suppressed because they don't have the money or they're not born in the right country with the resources, and they're limited. Think about all of those people, where we could be if those people had an opportunity to have inventions and to use their mind and their creativity. Think of where we would be. Right now, it's such a small percentage of the population. We would be so much further ahead than we are now because the majority of the population is suppressed or oppressed. Right, and I'm saying, let's do away with that. And there's one simple thing, that we can implement right now to give everybody the money that they need. Okay, eventually money will fall away. Eventually we will move to a moneyless system. But that's the cart before the horse. In order to get from 1 to 10, you got to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right. So eventually we will see a ton of changes as a result of this. In 20 years from now, if we implemented this Monday, okay, in 20 years from now we would see a very different world. Talk about technology. It would be through the roof. It'd be off the scale. Free energy the kinds of inventions and the alternative healthcare would be through the roof. It'd be a completely different reality than we live in now.
Okay. Well, that's good. If you could just give us your contact information if people want to find out more. So Ryan first.
Okay, if you want to learn more about the Zeitgeist Movement, I suggest visiting our main site, thezeitgeistmovement.com. That's ZEITGEIST, movement.com. We have a local Toronto chapter, but if you go to the main site, you could see all the chapters, and you could get to Toronto quite easily. If you want to reach me personally, you could reach me at outreach@zeitgeist-toronto.com with any questions you have, or if you want to know about events we're having in the city. So please come out. And come out to the Occupy event too, and support those people.
Okay, and Sandra?
Okay, so you can email me at shiftinto1@hotmail.com, or you can go to meetup.com and just search Shift Into One, and there's some information there.
Okay, so thanks for coming out. It was we can easily talk about this for a while, but
wow, it's gone fast. Thank you, Joe.
It's gone fast, yes. So thanks for watching the Cube Talk Show, and this show airs at 6 to 7 on the third Tuesday of the month on that channel. The archive shows, the past shows, are available on this site, on thatchannel.com, under past shows, and they're on my website, www.joetheinvestor.ca, and there's a Cube Talk Show tab on my website. My contact information, my email is joetheinvestor.today@gmail.com, and I'm on Twitter @joetheinvestor, and also on LinkedIn. Thanks for watching. Have a good evening.